Over the last 20 years, Charlotte County has been hit by two hurricanes, Hurricane Charlie and Hurricane Ian. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Spirillo with CCTV's Let's Talk Charlotte. On this episode, we're joined by Patrick Filler, the Emergency Management Director, to learn more about how you can protect yourself in the event of a natural disaster. Hurricane season might only be 6 months long, but here in Charlotte County Emergency Management offices, you guys plan all year round. Thank you for joining us today, Patrick. Tell us a little bit about what you do to plan all year round for hurricane season.
Well, in addition to hurricanes, we have a number of other natural and man-made disasters that we're continually planning for. One of those things is developing the comprehensive emergency management plan that the county works off of as our game plan for disasters. We also try to get out in front of as many of our residents as possible to let them know what they can do to prepare for disasters, whether that's a tropical storm or hurricane, a hazardous material spill, a pandemic, or any other natural or man-made disaster.
So what is this comprehensive plan that you're talking about? What does that cover?
So essentially it's a playbook that lets you know what each and every department within the county, both county agencies and our disaster partners, will be doing in the event of a disaster. It's in very broad general terms. We also have individual plans that are specific to individual disasters, but we're in a continual state of updating plans, developing new plans to ensure that we're as ready as possible should a disaster come our way.
And how do we go about training as an organization for these disasters?
There's a number of courses that we try to get delivered here in Charlotte County so that our disaster partners are as fine-tuned with their disaster response capabilities as possible. But more importantly are probably our exercises. Here in this room, we hold at least twice a year and many times more often full-scale EOC exercises where we run our disaster partners through their paces. We provide them scenarios, usually very challenging ones, where they get to work together as a team, come up with creative solutions for difficult problems so that when we are faced with our next disaster, unfortunately we will have more disasters, they will have worked together before and have a playbook to go off of.
Let's talk a little bit about this room. We're in a large room now with tables and then a large table behind us where the leads sit. How does this room function?
Well, essentially when we activate the Emergency Operations Center, we bring in all of our partners, whether that's county entities, the City of Punta Gorda, Charlotte County Schools, the Sheriff's Office, you name it, they're in this room. They're the decision makers with subject matter expertise and the resources at their disposal to work collaboratively and to be able to face problems and come up with solutions.
Now, I was here for Hurricane Ian, and this room didn't stop from a week before the hurricane to months after the hurricane. Are you rotating staff through? How do you manage keeping this room staffed 24 hours?
Absolutely. We hope that all the agencies that make up the EOC team, they've developed their bench. We try to get 3, 4, or more individuals who are trained and able to function in this room, because burnout's a real thing. Just as much as working out in the field, you can't work 24/7 nonstop. Same is true here. So we ensure that we rotate in as many fresh personnel as possible. We also have the added ability to request assistance from outside the area as a mutual aid request from other counties.
Okay. I know you have FP&L, you have the health department, the school board, and this is the one place where you can go, and then you also have the Joint Information Office that's then taking that information and putting it out to the residents. Where are some places where residents can get that up-to-date information?
Well, our Joint Information Center that operates as part of the Emergency Operations Center is critical to the information flow, both to internal stakeholders and to our outside public. They can engage with social media. They can call the call center, which is operating 24/7 when we activate. They can go to all of our websites. The local media is covering us in great detail. But in addition to that, what we saw after Ian, unfortunately, is the digital network wasn't available. You didn't get cell signal as easily as you used to. You didn't have Wi-Fi. So in the moment, we printed off thousands of sheets of paper, you remember, front and back with all the critical disaster information that we had at that moment. Each and every day we updated that. We put it in the hands of our disaster responders, our field personnel, put them at the points of distribution so that residents had some level of information available to them. We also encourage people to maintain those battery-powered radios in their disaster supply kit, because radios tend to stay up a little bit longer than the TV waves and your internet. Going forward into the future, we're going to have what we call information hubs. These are locations at our recreation centers and our libraries throughout the county, so that if you're in an area of the county that's impacted, you have no power, you have no Wi-Fi, you have no ability to get information, you know at the very least, if you can get to one of those rec centers or libraries safely, that means we can get there safely, and we will have, at the bare minimum, those printed off pieces of paper with information up to date as possible. As time grows since the impact, we'll increase the amount of resources at those locations, maybe to the extent of having hotspots for internet service and cell signal, but at the very least, you have the bare bones amount of information that we can provide to you.
What is one of the things that you took away from Hurricane Ian that going into it you didn't think of, but then coming out of it, looking back, you really have changed the flow of how we're doing things?
Well, I think when we saw such a major impact as Hurricane Ian, the amount of resources that flowed into the community, with the assistance of the state and federal government, they did a wonderful job. There's only so many places to put those resources. So determining ahead of time additional locations where we can have points of distribution or staging sites for disaster resources will benefit us, because in the moment, we had to get very creative. If we have more, we already had some pre-designated locations, but if we have more options available to us, not just county-owned locations, but work with our commercial sector, our retail sector to have some locations where we can have resources available.
Okay. Now, the saying is you hide from wind, run from water. That's something that, another hurricane could hit us at another point. Let's talk a little bit to the residents about the importance of that hiding from or running from water, and because we're so low-lying here in Charlotte County.
Absolutely. I can't overstate the vulnerability we have to storm surge here in Southwest Florida, specifically us here in Charlotte County. We saw some of that in Lee County. Unfortunately for them, they lost a number of lives due to the amount of storm surge they received in the Fort Myers Beach, Estero Bay, Sanibel, and even up into the Caloosahatchee River. Had the storm tracked slightly further north, we would have seen those same storm surge values here in Charlotte County. We really dodged a bullet. Where Ian was primarily a wind storm for us, storm surge, you can't survive. 80% of fatalities due to tropical weather occur because of water, whether that's freshwater rainfall, high surf conditions, or storm surge. 60% of those 80% are storm surge related. It's incredibly important. If we call for an evacuation of an area, it's because of storm surge threat. The National Hurricane Center at that point has given us a forecast of the potential for storm surge. You need to evacuate that area. You need to run from water. If it's a wind event, Florida Building Code, for the most part, if you have a modern home built to modern Florida Building Code, most storms you can survive. You know your home better than we do. So, I've certainly put that in the hands of our residents to know their home and what they can safely survive in a wind event. But you can, most cases, hunker down and shelter in place from wind. But when water comes into the equation, you have to evacuate.
And what do we have around the county to identify which zone that you're in?
Well, our primary tool is on our website, Know Your Zone. You type in your address, and you can simply see what color-coded evacuation zone you're in. We also have the program, the legacy program of the collars, but unfortunately Ian did a number on our signs, and there's not too many of those still remaining. Over 80,000 signs, were damaged and had to be replaced. So we're looking at the long term with the feasibility to keep that program going, but right now, going to our website or even calling our office, we can help you find out what zone you're in. And knowing your zone now is incredibly important. You don't want to be in the situation where a storm is bearing down on us and you don't know what evacuation zone you're in.
And will they get that call directly from the Office of Emergency Management, making that call saying, okay, this zone is going to have to be the one that's evacuated, and that will be put out through our JIC and through the local news media?
Yes.
There will be very clear direction on what zone needs to be evacuated.
Absolutely. Through every means possible, the ones we've talked about and our Alert Charlotte program, we will send out information specifically. If you live in this evacuation zone, you are now under evacuation.
And what is the Alert Charlotte program?
Thank you. AlertCharlotte.com is one way to access it. This is our emergency notification program. This allows us to quickly reach out to you via text message, email, phone call, all of the above, one of the above, however you want, and get emergency information to you. You also have the ability to select other things that you want to be notified on. Mosquito spraying, road closures, weather events outside of hurricanes.
And that's the thing, is we focus so much on weather events, but we also train for events that are not the weather events, whether it's a crash on 75. One time we practiced one with a rig that had some type of airborne gas. So it's not just weather events that we're practicing for, correct?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, Florida's not unique in this manner. There's disasters of all colors, shapes, and sizes that could happen at any given time, whether that's our natural disasters such as weather or man-made disasters. There's a number of hazardous materials that travel our highways on a daily basis. There's planes in the air. There's all sorts of things that could happen. We have to be prepared for and ready to protect ourselves, our homes, our families, if something were to be encountered here in Charlotte County.
Okay, now when people are planning, because we know we should all have our hurricane box and our stuff planned for, and right now we're coming to the end of hurricane season, so we have some time to plan, but what are some of the things that residents should make sure that they have ready and prepared in their hurricane and their to-go kit?
Hurricane season's the time of year that we obviously put the most emphasis on be prepared. We could have a storm at any time. But in reality, all year long, we should be maintaining that disaster supply kit. This is 5 to 7 days worth of disaster supply resources that will get you through. One benefit during Hurricane Ian was we were the only show in town. Hurricane Ian was the only ongoing disaster of that significance throughout the United States. Had there been another disaster in the Southeast or anywhere in the country, the amount of resources that we had come into the community as quickly as we had might have been a bit delayed. It's very important that people have enough supplies. That's the food, water, medications, first aid kits, pet supplies to get them through for 5 to 7 days. And that goes outside of hurricane season as well. We have wildfires, we have tornadoes, we have a number of things that could occur. And it's prudent. It's part of just like doing your taxes. Every year you should dust off your disaster supply kit and have it ready to go.
And one of the things you mentioned earlier that showed to be really beneficial in Hurricane Ian was the radio, the crank-powered radio, because the radios were still on. We could get information out via the radio, even if you didn't have internet. People have become so used to just having internet all the time to then just have no internet, and the radio really came through as a way for us to get information out.
Absolutely. On my phone I get a weekly report that tells me how many hours a week that I've had screen time. It's kind of depressing how often I look at my phone, but one thing that does last generally during disasters is those radio waves. Having that battery powered or crank powered radio is a crucial tool to be engaged with the latest information possible.
Okay, what should people do to prepare their homes for an event of an emergency?
Well, knowing your home, first off, obviously knowing what exact evacuation zone you're in, knowing the building code to which your home was built or has been upgraded to. They can find that information by going to the property appraiser's website and seeing, if they don't already know, and seeing what the building code their home was built to. But there's some other mitigating things you can do. Obviously, protecting your window coverings, whether that's shutters or plywood where you've screw into the building itself. Removing the plants outside of your house, the potted plants, the other potentially windborne debris that could be a projectile in the event of a windstorm. Knowing those things, but being prepared with a checklist so that at 3 days out, these are the things I need to do. At 1 day out, this is where I need to be. Having that game plan in mind as part of your plan is incredibly important. The less decisions you have to make in the midst of a stressful situation, the less stress you're adding to the situation.
When you look back at even we had a storm this year that had just rainfall, and we had some damage from that. What message would you have for the residents in being prepared and being ready for the next storm, which is inevitable?
Yep, and I think never letting your guard down is incredibly important to understand. I wish that the way that probabilities worked with tropical weather in Florida was we got hit last year, we're good for a few years, and that's just not how it works. Unfortunately, we could see tropical weather or another major disaster from a weather event or something else at any given time. Not letting your guard down, don't let it stress you out. It's just part of what we have to deal with living in the tropical paradise of Florida. But ensuring that you and your family are prepared as possible, having options available to you, and like I said, coming up with decisions and solutions in the midst of a problem is always more stressful than having thought it out and thought through options beforehand. So having a true disaster plan for you and your family is incredibly beneficial and helps to reduce the stress going into any hurricane season or any other disaster.
And we have kind of a transient population here that it turns over often. I know you guys go out to community engagements to speak about those things. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. It's one of our office goals to ensure that we are upping the amount of people we speak to each and every year because we know that not only do we have seasonal residents, but we have a constant cycle of new residents to Charlotte County who have never dealt with tropical weather. We go out to civic organizations, communities, expos, you name it, we will get out there. We want to talk to as many people as possible because there's people from the Midwest who have never spent a hurricane season in Florida or a hurricane season where we were impacted might not know some of these things, and we need to let everybody know, let them know about storm surge because unfortunately that's something hard to envision if you've never seen it. Hurricane Idalia that we just dealt with this year never got closer than 150 miles to our coastline, yet its outer bands and its onshore winds caused heavy rainfall and about 3.5 feet of above normal tides, essentially storm surge. That 3.5 feet flooded a number of homes to, not life-threatening levels, but to the point where there's considerable damage. Understanding the vulnerabilities we have here in Charlotte County and then planning around those, that's the best thing that our residents can do.
And what about hurricane fatigue as the years go on and, storms come, you're in the cone, you're out of the cone. How can we help citizens deal with that?
And I think, especially coming out of the pandemic, last year was not opportune time to be dealing with a major impact. And now to think each and every year you have that bit of trauma having already dealt with Ian. I think it's important to just kind of understand tropical weather's here. It's here to stay. It is entirely survivable. There's things you can do to help prepare your home to minimize damage. But there's absolutely things you can do to protect your life, and that's the most important thing. You can replace homes, you can repair homes, but your life cannot be replaced. You need to do the things necessary, and they're simple tasks. Evacuating, when you're told to evacuate, can help save your life. That helps to unburden you with some of the fatigue, and just accepting that Florida has tropical weather. We're going to have tropical storms, we're going to have hurricanes, just like we have those beaches. That's part of the price we pay.
Right.
And just adding it into your annual, spring cleaning, taxes, changing the oil, be prepared.
Make sure you have your water and your food and your kit before you're in the cone, because then everyone's at Publix and at the gas stations.
Absolutely.
And we did see gas, one of the things that really lines start forming really early, and that's something that you need if you're going to stay or if you're going to evacuate, so kind of to be prepared.
Yeah, and one of the tips that we like to give during hurricane season specific to gas is never let your car get below half a tank of gas during hurricane season. I know it's easier said than done, but do your best to try to ensure that you're topping off your fuel, that you've got that 5 to 7 days worth of water and food, because I'll tell you, I have 2 small children. My wife, I live in a red zone, so almost every storm they have to evacuate. I'm not there to help them. We've built into the plan that every hurricane season, the kits are ready to go, they're labeled, they know where they're going if they have to evacuate. They're going to my parents' home outside of likely evacuation areas, and I know that everyone is safe. I can operate, they're going to be safe. The home may receive some damage, but my loved ones are okay.
Right. And it's not just your food, and it's your paperwork too. Make sure that you have your important paperwork together, your prescriptions and all of that. So if you do have to evacuate, it's all in a kit and can go with you is important as well.
Absolutely. There's some documents that are difficult to replace if you lose them. We're talking birth certificates, social security cards, insurance policies. I'll be the first to admit insurance climate right now is not ideal. I am one of those individuals whose insurance company went under after Ian, but it's still very, very important you do everything you can to insure your property to help get you back made whole after a storm, because FEMA assistance is not going to get you there. That's not what FEMA's made for. FEMA's made to stabilize you, to ensure that you're eating, that your life is not in jeopardy. But they are not going to replace your home. They're not going to. The average person who's able to get a FEMA check gets around $4,000. Okay. If you're the worst off person, you get around $30,000. So that's not going to make you whole again. It's very important people do what they can in this challenging environment to get insurance to the level they need to be made whole.
What are some of the other programs that come in after a hurricane that can help stabilize your home or your property? I know there's Operation Blue Roof. What are some of those other organizations that do come and help?
Well, there's a number of charitable organizations that enter into the area, as well as governmental organizations. Operation Blue Roof is an Army Corps of Engineer program that assists with exactly that, putting blue roofs or tarps onto damaged roofs of properties. Great program. There's a number of nonprofits, your Team Rubicons, your faith-based organizations that are there to assist. You can access all of these through registration processes, which we communicate out in the midst of a storm and after a storm. But one of those is crisis cleanup, and there's some others that allow you to essentially register for assistance, and the voluntary organization that matches your need gets matched up to you.
Is there any organizations that people can become engaged with and part of now when we're not in a crisis that then they'll be able to either help if they're available or receive help from?
Absolutely. There's so many community organizations here in Charlotte County and at the national level that do amazing work in the midst of disasters. Here locally, the overall umbrella organization that is sort of a collective of those organizations is what's the Charlotte County Community Organizations Active in Disasters, COAD. If they go to the website coadfl.org, they can find more information on this. But essentially, if you're in an organization, say it's a civic organization, a fraternal organization, what have you, that has some interest in doing disaster work, assisting in any way after a storm or even before a storm, those organizations affiliate with the COAD, and then we have the ability to communicate to the COAD the needs of the community.
Okay, what about CERT? I know CERT is another group that we have locally.
One of the very, very strong organizations that we help coordinate here out of emergency management, our community emergency response team. I would put it up against any of the other teams in the state or nation for that matter. Incredibly active group of individuals. These are individuals who've gone through at a minimum 3 days of training, the CERT basic training. We conduct this training throughout the year. Every quarter we try to move it around the county. Again, a 3-day class. Sometimes it's 3 consecutive days, sometimes it's 3 consecutive Saturdays. But it goes over things like general preparedness, first aid, wide area search, how to interface with the incident command structure of response agencies. Wonderful training. We have about 200, 300 people who actively are part of that team that our team here has trained over the years. Even if you don't want to be a member of the team and go do firefighter rehab or help out in shelters, just taking the training makes you a better prepared resident of Charlotte County. One, to help look after your own interests, your own family, but also to help your neighbor. I can't tell you how important it is that the neighbor look after neighbor here in Charlotte County, and it happens organically without our urging. Our neighbors, they look after each other, and this gives you more tools to work off of if you go through the CERT training.
Mm-hmm. All right, very good. Thank you for joining us, Patrick. I really appreciate all of this information, and it's so much nicer to be able to watch this and get this information out, not in the midst of
Absolutely.
An emergency, when we're calm and collective and we can really think about and plan for the future, because like you said, it's part of living here in paradise.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Well, thank you for watching this episode of Let's Talk Charlotte. And like we said, we have the pleasure of living here in paradise, so we do need to be prepared for tropical events or any other natural disaster that could happen. For CCTV Let's Talk Charlotte, I'm Elizabeth Spirillo.